Our cute little Sucrose is finally back on the banner, and this time around she's even better than before. Not to mention that she has always been one of the best 4-star character in the entire game ever since the start of Genshin Impact. But of course, you know, there has been certain buff towards reactions, which obviously, help Sucrose even more a little bit there, which of course we're going to be discussing everything about Sucrose and everything that's updated regarding her build, as well as specific team comps and stuff, because, it's been a while since we talked about Sucrose, and ever since then there has been a lot of new character coming into the game, which increases the variety of team comps that she can be in. And that's usually the most exciting part. Now, back when Sucrose was released, I don't think many actually appreciate Sucrose because, regarding elemental mastery stat, we did not know much about it. However, as the patch goes on, theory crafters start digging more and more into the game. We realize a lot more about the importance of elemental mastery, and specifically regarding the use of Sucrose, turning her into one of the best 4-star character ever since. But then, of course, overall she still is a 4-star character, and there has been many other 5-star character that came into the game as well, which of course most of us actually uses 5-star character more than 4-star. But in terms of the values of Sucrose, she's still pretty much a very valuable character whenever you do decide to use her and use her in the correct situation, because she is still some of the better character out there that provides you EM. Plus there are a lot of newer content for Sucrose, like Fontaine and Natlin character that can make use of her, especially Electro Charge buff that came into the game. Shaska is here, and hopefully you've won your pools, but if you haven't and would love to have some more luck, then don't forget to check out Loot Bar. With their help, I actually got Shaska in my first 10 pool on my 50-50 by getting an increased luck. If you know me, I've been recommending you guys Loot Bar before, since you can always save almost a 20% on all of your top-ups. With over 100,000 orders and so many good reviews at this point, you can be sure that Loot Bar is trustworthy. Here you can see my order receipts of all of my top-ups that I have done. So guys, be sure to check out Loot Bar through the link in my description, as it can be a great way for you to save your money, especially if you are topping up a large amount. Now, first off, I want to quickly go through what Sucrose actually do again, to have kind of like a quick refresher if you are looking into building and use Sucrose correctly. Now, overall, in terms of Sucrose building, we're basically not going to be caring about most of her stats. Apart from, technically I would say her EM is the most important, her energy recharge, and her specific level to level 90. So for her normal attack, most of her talent we don't really care too much about talent level, because while how Sucrose do damage is not through her attack scaling, so talent level doesn't really help you, but it's more about the elemental reactions that you get off Sucrose and all the chain reactions you get from whenever you do her swirl. And that's where her normal attacks comes in to be very important, even though it's just a 4 simple attacking combo with her charge attack. It's still a very powerful kit within her arsenal, because Sucrose is a catalyst character, therefore all of her normal attack deal animal damage, leading to the possibility of swirling element. Moreover, her normal attack and her charge attack has a separate internal cooldown, which makes it a lot easier for you to trigger elemental reactions as well, depending on however you do her combo. Now, her elemental skill sounds important because while it technically is, however, it's very important for Sucrose as well, because this E skill has access to a bit of AoE. Now, it's not as good as Kazuya's crowd control ability, but it does have the ability to group enemies that slightly spread out to each other, making it very much easier for you to apply elements and then for Sucrose to do elemental reactions if you are having her as an on-field driver. Her elemental burst also has the ability to suck your enemies in, while also is capable of infusing a specific element. Now, even though it has the ability to be infused, however, you being able to control the specific element in which her burst is infused can be pretty tough at times, especially when you have multitude of different elements being applied onto your enemies on field, especially within group situation. Therefore, you don't really have to stress too much always. Generally, her first rotation is going to be the easiest for you to get the right elements, but if you're very good at playing Sucrose, you can actually control this a little bit more. But obviously the importance of swirling the correct element isn't going to be as important whenever Sucrose hit her C6, because that's when she got access to enhancing the elemental damage of the element infused within her burst. But overall, once again, I just feel that you don't really have to stress too much about getting the correct element like 100% of the time, because honestly it is pretty hard for you to get it right all the time. Now her passive is where it starts to get more important for her, because on her first passive, Sucrose basically give a 50 EM to the character of the elements that she has just swore. Now she can actually do this for multiple elements, so technically speaking, all of your team members should be able to get this 50 EM increase. Do note that this only applies to other character on your team, and it will not be applied onto Sucrose herself, so you can't really count this into her total EM count later on. Her second passive talent is where it makes Sucrose one of the best 4-star character in the game, because whenever Sucrose hits an opponent with her E skill or her burst, all of her party member apart from Sucrose will gain 20% of her EM, which is why most of the time whenever you're building Sucrose, you just wanna build her with a full 3 EM piece so that she has the ability to give your party member as much EM as she can. So while overall I would say that's Sucrose skill and kit, right? It's pretty simple. The main thing about Sucrose is mostly going to be how you play her and about how much EM she's providing your team. Obviously she's going to be used in the team that uses elemental mastery the most, and she does have 2 playstyle, which of course we're going to be discussed in a little bit, and how you use Sucrose in terms of which playstyle is where Sucrose actually shines. Now moving on to her talent priority, it's pretty simple. Like you can level up her talent if you do want to, because again, if you're pretty much free to play, then every little bit of level and adding damage counts, right? But the more important thing for Sucrose is you always remember to level up her to level 90, because that's going to be making the most difference for you whenever you're using Sucrose. The Sucrose constellation is also important because one, she's certainly on this specific banner right now, so you should be able to get a couple of Sucrose constellation provided you do try to pull on Chaska banner to get either Chaska or Auroron. Right, but overall her constellation is pretty important for her. Like, you know, even if you have a C0 Sucrose, you can still play her, but it is very different whenever you have her cons, because at C1 you get an additional 1 E skill charge. This is pretty nice for her because Sucrose as a character, her elemental burst is very important. Having an additional E skill charge does help her with elemental particles. And second, obviously she has more ability to swirl and do more damage overall. Her C2 adds a 2 additional second to her burst duration. This is technically pretty good because Sucrose elemental burst before her C2 is so damn short that it's pretty much over the moment you cast it. I really have to say it. So having an additional 2 seconds is nice, and while I at least appreciate the game gives her the ability to prolong her elemental burst. C3 is okay, you don't really need her talent level that much. C4 Sucrose is pretty good because she has the ability to reduce her E skill cooldown, leading her to have, you know, more E skill usage, more energy regeneration. But obviously this mostly affects if you use Sucrose as an on-field driver, so do bear that in mind. C5 is more talent level, and as I've mentioned before, C6 is pretty nice, not the most important, but it does add her more competitive edge whenever you are, you know, considering to use other Anemo character or support character in Sucrose place, because now she has the ability to add an extra 20% elemental damage bonus to the correct infused element. So overall her constellation is nice. Technically speaking, if you're using her as an on-field driver, then her up to C4 is rather important. Otherwise, aiming for her C6 is okay, but if you have low constellation Sucrose, you can still use her and she will still do very well, because the main point of using Sucrose on your team most of the time is you focusing on using her in an EM team. Now, moving on to Sucrose specific build, I think she's one of the most easy character to invest in the entire game. Like, I'm not even kidding. It's been basically 4 years now for Genshin Impact, and her specific build mostly hasn't changed because her best artifact is still the 4-piece Viridescent set. This is the specific set that is so powerful on a Nemo support character that I don't think any set is replacing it anytime soon, as you can have seen after 4 years. So obviously I am recommending this set like all the time, because why the hell not? Other than that, you can have 4-piece Instructor, a very powerful set still, even though it's only a 4-star set. Some other set, you know, like the Gilded Dreams, to try and build her even more EM, because this set does give her a ton of EM, though I don't think it's worth it over either 4-piece Paradescent or Instructor. But still, if you want to use it, then it's technically fine. Or if you still want to play even more around with her artifact set, you know, the Flower of Paradise set, especially when she's used in specific Dendro teams, that is still technically fine. But overall, you're not going to see anything perform as well as 4-piece Paradescent and 4-piece Instructor. So those are very, very much set in stone. For Sucrose artifact specific build, like as I've mentioned before, you just dump full EM into a build and you're technically gonna be fine. Try to get energy recharge on substat though, that's going to be the best case scenario for her. I generally don't recommend you to run an energy recharge sans to try and make up for it, because while you know building Sucrose is already easy enough, I'd rather you go for a 3 EM piece and try to get energy recharge enough on your substat that way. So to actually maximize Sucrose build. As for a specific weapon, it's still pretty much the same. For a very long time, you either run her with an EM Catalyst or an Energy Recharge Catalyst. Now EM Catalyst, you have the Sacrificial Fragment, basically the best catalyst out there for her, because not only it gives her an insane number of EM, but also give her the ability to actually do 3 E skill in one go if you have her as C1. So overall, this is a very good catalyst for her to use, better than most other catalysts out there. Other than that, if you're very much invested, Thousand Floating Dream is nice. You know, it has a little bit of supportive element in terms of giving your team a bit more EM and very good EM increase for Sucrose. And while it is a 5-star weapon, so wow, we don't really have anything more to say about that, right? Wandering Even Star. This is an interesting option because it has the ability to give your entire team attacking percentage depending on which team you use, but obviously many characters on her team sometimes do appreciate attack percentage. So depending on which team you use and depending on whether or not you have this weapon, it can be pretty nice. Other than that, you can have access to supportive weapon for Sucrose, the Thrilling Tales of Dragon. A 3-star weapon ever since the start of the game, still one of the best support weapon out there in the game up until now. You're giving basically a whooping 50% attack increase for your specific character. That's actually so damn good if you're not having Sucrose as an on-field character. Right, Hakushin Ring, depending on which team you're using in, very good as well. It is a craftable weapon, so you do have to invest a little bit in terms of farming and stuff, but overall very nice. Favonius Codex, right, an energy recharge weapon overall, but it gives elemental particle for your team to be more supportive, so it's also really nice. Other than that, you know, the Fruit of Fulfillment, I think overall this is a nice EM boost for specifically Sucrose, and also have the ability to get her more energy regen. Or an interesting option is going to be the Prototype Amber, because this actually has access to a bit of healing. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. Like, if your team actually lacks in a healer, you're struggling a little bit, especially on an electro charge team, because many of the time that specific team do not have a specific healer, so Prototype Amber can be seen to get some use. So overall, I think that's everything regarding her build. As I've mentioned before, it's very easy to build Sucrose. You don't really have to fret too much about it. The tough part about Sucrose is actually when you put her in a team, how you're planning to use her and how you specifically use her in different team comps, because Sucrose as a character in some specific team comp can get very hard to use her wall. However, if you do use her wall, it can become one of the best team on your account, which is where we're touching on, you know, her gameplay, her playstyle, and her team comp building. Alright, now we touch on some of the most updated part about her team building. Now specifically, as you have known, Electro Charge has got a decent increase. I say decent because obviously it's not too much of an increase toward electro charge to the point that it become very much meta in the game. However, the difference that it makes toward Sucrose electro charge team have greatly been benefited, because if you don't know, Sucrose electro charge team mostly has been used for most of the players who focuses on using 4-star character or free to play, but it has always been a very powerful team before that helped many clear the abyss. Now, considering that it's got a buff, you're going to be able to clear the abyss with electro charge Sucrose team a lot easier. Not to mention the addition of Auroron to the game, providing an additional possibility of building Sucrose electro charge team, and moreover Auroron has access to the ability of Cinder City buff. Therefore, a team such as Sucrose, Auroron, Fischl and Xingqiu basically has been pretty popular during this patch, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna be popular way down in the future regarding Sucrose electro charge team, because this team right now is very powerful. I technically haven't been able to use Sucrose electro charge team to clear the abyss before, because wow, I'm not really that good at specifically investing into my 4-star character and clearing the abyss with 4-star. However, this time around I'm actually managed to do it, which is definitely a huge feat. So if you just pull for Auroron and also has Sucrose build, Fischl, Xingqiu, better try this team out. It's pretty easy for you to play, so definitely try it out. Another on-field driving Sucrose team that is very popular and some of the most powerful team in the game is a team which is called Sucrose, which comprises of Sucrose, Xiangling, Kokomi and Fischl ever since. Now, I won't be going through this team specifically in this video because one, I'm actually not good at it, as this team is basically the hardest team that I've known in the game to actually master it correctly, because this team has a very specific rotation that you need to go step by step in order for you to use this team efficiently. But I'm going to be linking another very great guide about Sucrose team down in the description below, so better check it out if you're interested in this team, just to know that this team is still one of the better team out there in the game for you to play around with if you you're not investing a lot of 5-star character on your account and you have the specific character on your account. Now on to specific Sucrose support team, because that's where I think you find many of the other Sucrose team to be around. You've got like Sucrose being on a Pyro team ever since like on a Hu Tao, D-Look or even Yoimiya team. This team has been very good, and these characters all appreciate having Sucrose on their team to give you more EM buff, as well as obviously if you have a C6, an extra 20% elemental damage bonus is nothing to laugh at. Freeze team, before I didn't really want to mention Freeze team in this video because it's basically dead. Hopefully there's going to be some kind of hope for cryo character, especially Freeze team down the road. But if you're still interested in Freeze team, right, Sucrose can still be there, specifically supporting some of the cryo DPSs out there in the game. Kind of nice. Or melt Ayaka with Ayaka, Xiangling, Sucrose and Bennett. Overall, I think that's a decently nice team as well, though. Just to know that even if you have a C6 Sucrose trying to infuse her elemental burst with cryo to support Ayaka, many of the time that's going to be pyro instead. So Xiangling is going to have the damage bonus here, but overall, even if it's infused pyro, that's going to be more pyro applied onto your enemies. So Ayaka can technically melt more consistently, so I think overall that's fine. However, Sucrose being in a Dendro team is a very powerful thing as well, because interestingly, the ability for Sucrose to chain reactions definitely helps to apply more elements onto your enemies. Therefore, if you are using her in an aggravate team, that helps your party members in terms of doing more aggravate consistently, especially like a Yai Fish comp. It is a very powerful comp ever since. Or even if you're using her in a newer comp, like for example Kuching, Auroron, Sucrose and Yaoya for example, you want to play around with that, that's still pretty much fine. And whenever you touch on Hyper Bloom as well, Sucrose on the Hyper Bloom team can be very powerful, because while many of the time she technically is the character that triggers Hyper Bloom, therefore especially when you're building her with EM, she can actually do very nice number in terms of triggering Hyper Bloom for you, which is obviously one of the main reasons why Sucrose is a very powerful character. character. And not to mention, there has been some newer character that I've wanted to touch on that can actually use Sucrose on their specific team. You know, specifically like having a new Bullet, playing around with Sucrose, Xiangling, and Furina. I think that's a decent team. Generally, this is where Kazuha comes in, but if you're more focusing on having more EM applied to your team comps, then while Sucrose can be there, if you're going around with a Risley on your team, having a Bennett, Xiangling, and a Sucrose can definitely help if you're playing that route. Or, you know, Alekino as a character would also benefit a lot out of Sucrose, right? Running with a Bennett, Sucrose, and Yelan, very powerful comps for you to play around with. Cloran, if you want to have her in an aggravate, having Sucrose being there is also fine. If you're, either you're missing out on other support character or specifically Kazuha, and some of our newer character in that then like Mualani running along with Xiangling, Sucrose, and Kokomi can definitely help, right? Because Mualani do a lot of vaporize number if you allow her to be, and Sucrose with that will definitely help you out. So I know that it has been a long time since Sucrose has been out, and a lot of other 5-star character coming into the game as well, specifically support character. For example, Kazuha, or especially Shilonen, is some of the more powerful support character that is very much competitive whenever you are trying to use Sucrose in a team, which begs the question of how relevant it is for you to be using Sucrose nowadays. As well, of course, regarding specifically when it comes to elemental damage increase, if you have invested into a Shilonen, technically speaking, she is the best support character out there because of how much she is able to resistant shred for your team. Therefore, you do not need a 4-piece Viridescent, Kazuha, or Sucrose, and the ability to have elemental damage bonus, which is really nice. And Kazuha as well, even though he doesn't have access to EM increase, he gives a lot of elemental damage bonus to your team. But obviously, if you're looking into it, where Sucrose shine the most is obviously when you're using her in teams regarding when you want to have a lot of EM increase, right? Shilonen and Kazuha technically are the character that focuses on a lot of teams that has Hydro, Electro, and Pyro reactions, whereas teams where would love to have a lot of EM, specifically in Dendro teams where Hyper Bloom specifically, or even Aggravate, when it comes to times when there are Dendro character on Sucrose team, or especially Electro Charge team, those teams would still appreciate Sucrose a lot. And Sucrose is definitely a lot more free-to-play friendly character because specifically, again, Electro Charge or Dendro team that has Sucrose is very free-to-play friendly. You don't need to invest a lot into your 5-star character, and those teams will still be able to clear you content most of the time, especially after a lot of buff being given into the game, and that is really nice. So overall, guys, I think that's everything I have to say regarding the updated guide and build of Sucrose. I hope that has been a lot of a refresher for you regarding Sucrose. So if you have any other questions about Sucrose or discussion, leave it down in the comment section, as I love to get to you guys there, or other lovely Genshin player will get to you. If you're new to the channel, guys, don't forget to subscribe to not miss out on my future Genshin videos. Also, guys, Black Friday on Loot Bar is still on, so if you are planning to save a lot of Primogems, be sure to check the link out, as I'm sure it will be very valuable to you. I really appreciate you guys staying with me to this part of the video, guys, and with that, I wish you a super day, and I'll catch you on my next video.